Hey, Bradley. Thanks for getting this in. Oh, looks like you want to be called Brad. Okay, hi, Brad. Thanks for getting this in. Okay, so here are your contact sheets. And thank you for labeling your images whether or not they were incident or reflective. That's really helpful for me. However, what I find incredibly surprising is that for the most part, your exposures are exactly the same between almost every single set of images. I don't see any difference in your exposure settings. And there should be significant differences. Especially, for instance, here. Now, in this one, I see a very slight difference between the exposure settings, but I should see a much bigger difference because depending on what you're pointing your reflective, when you have your meter set in reflective mode, depending on what you're pointing it at, there's really no in between. In this image, the sky is either, everything is either white or nearly, not quite, but nearly black. This is much darker than medium gray. Now, in reflective mode, your meter is going to give you exposure settings that will yield a medium gray local value out of whatever it is that you're pointing it at. So you only have two options here. You've got this deep green foliage and you've got the white water or sky. So this image should be either really overexposed if you're pointing it at the deep green foliage, or really underexposed if you're pointing it at the sky or the water. And it's neither. It's actually exposed really well. So I don't understand how that could have possibly happened. Yep, I just don't. And then this exposure is a little bit darker, but not significantly. I mean, maybe by like half a stop. And I should have seen a big difference in this particular image. So I don't know how you're using your meter, but it's not giving results that I would expect. Here too, everything's either rather dark or bright. So I should see. Hold on, let me pause this. Sorry about that. That's my office phone. Okay, sorry, Brad. That was a really long phone call. All right, so like I was saying, I don't see significant differences between most of your exposure sets, which I find confusing. So if you could get back in here and explain to me what your method was, so I can see what the difference is. Because if you were using a gray card for all of your reflective meterings, maybe that would happen. Maybe you would have almost identical exposures for incident and reflective. But based on these overexposures that I'm seeing right here, I don't think you were using a gray card. So that's that. You have a lot of really interesting subject matter here. And then these are both really underexposed, right? And that shouldn't have happened if you were in incident. You should not have had an underexposure, especially on an overcast, evenly lit day. That just wouldn't have happened. So I think there's something going on here that's not quite correct in regards to your metering methods. But your final images are pretty interesting. This is really neat. This building with this reflection, kind of playing with this reflection of the subject matter that was actually in front of us. That's really an interesting image. This is just a great framing of this statue. I mean, these feel almost alive the way that you frame them. Really entertaining. And this is an interesting structure. I wonder what the story behind that is. It's like, and then this one I think could be really interesting, but these growths here, whatever these are, that are in the foreground and out of the depth of field, so they're out of focus, are pretty distracting. But the crabs themselves are really interesting. This is, without these there, if you could have framed this differently so that you didn't have these things in the foreground, this could have been a really interesting image to look at. Okay, and then lastly, in regard to the way that we turn in images, your PDF is pretty low quality, meaning that the resolution isn't very good. When I enlarge this to full screen, the images that I see are very pixelated. And it's difficult for me to give you much feedback because they're so pixelated. So however it is that you're outputting your PDFs, I'm assuming that you're using Adobe Acrobat Pro. And just make sure that you create a file of high quality, so high resolution, and then also make sure that it's defaulted for a large size monitor. And that will give me a high enough quality file to really review and look at, because a lot of these images are just really pixelated. I've seen worse, Like the full-size images are actually fine. Your full-size images have no pixelation problems, but the contact sheets are just really, really pixelated and difficult for me to look at. So I'm assuming the contact sheets might be made on Lightroom, so just make sure that when Lightroom is exporting PDFs that it's exporting for a really large size monitor. Okay? What just happened? I don't know. I don't know how to get out of that. There we go. That's how we get out of that. Okay. All right. Well, anyways, thanks for getting this in. And please, like I said, get back in here and let me know how you used your light meter. Because, like I said, I should see significant differences in exposure quality between reflective and incident, and I don't. However, I do want to thank you for telling me which images are reflective and which are incident, because that would help me if I saw a difference between the exposures, but I don't. Okay. Thanks, Brad.